I'm Carl Dykstra Jenkins. I'm here at lunch hour, and I'm here to answer some questions that you all want to know the answers to, and I'm just grateful to be here. Let's get into it. We're gonna have some good food, have some good questions.
You got a new album coming, 2 books in progress. You're running one of the oldest black theater companies in America. There's a East European tour on the horizon. Most people would be exhausted just after listing all of that. What does a normal Tuesday look like for you right now?
Well, you know, a normal Tuesday for me, this past Tuesday was crazy. I woke up, had to be in Philly because I, had the opportunity to do some cool shit with 1916 company. That's like watches. They used to be called Govberg watches, but I had to go over there, 1916 company, and do some shit with them, which was super dope to always, work with Greg and the rest of the guys over there. Then I got on a train, went to New York, and Black Thought from the Roots has a new podcast that he's launching with one of the writers from NBC, John Adler. And that was dope. So, went to New York, did that. Then Tuesday night, back in Philly, had dinner late. Then I went to Delaware, and then I actually went to sleep. I stayed at a hotel in Delaware. As you know, I love Delaware. And that was my typical Tuesday this Tuesday. Now, next Tuesday, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna be doing, you know what I mean? But, it is very exhausting. Oh, and Tuesday morning, I was at City Hall too. I forgot, I had to go get the deeds for New Freedom Theater because we're doing a revitalization project. It's a $128 million revitalization project. It's very serious. So deeds, talking to the revenue builder, all that was one day.
People know you as Dykstra, the hip-hop artist. People in Philly know you as the theater man. People in certain rooms know you as a thinker and a writer. Which one of those feels like most like you right now? Or is it something none of those labels can quite capture?
Well, I think that I don't necessarily look at them as labels. I look at them as for people who are having language or people who are in conversation with each other. They have to have some way of describing what it is that you do, and I do those things. I am a writer, I am a producer, I am an actor, I am a thespian. I write songs, I record songs, I write songs for other people. So, there's all those different things that are different, that make up different elements of who I am as a person. And I think that they make sense in certain conversations. But I think if somebody tries to fit you into a box, I think that the one box that I think we all fit in is humans. And so it's not that like I'm worried about being put in a different box or worried about being described in any particular way. I think whatever way anybody describes me on any particular day, as long as it's positive, it's good. And even if it's negative, guess what? It's none of my business what they say. You know what I mean? So,
with everything you're doing across these disciplines, music, theater, books, education, what's one thing that's driving all of it? What's the obsession underneath the work?
I think the thing that drives my work is doing something that's meaningful, knowing that there's a higher power that's guiding me to do these different things, opening doors for me that typically would not open unless there had to be a higher power doing it. Like, even just talking with, one of the Roots the other day, the whole journey has to be something about a bigger cause. And we do these education things because it's not just, a song that's just going to be rhyme and reason. No, this is a song that we want that is going to have some kind of impact on people's lives. Maybe they'll hear a song and think, maybe they'll hear a song and then it'll change the way that they look at the world. Maybe they'll hear the song and something that's, maybe they're on a spiritual journey. Maybe they're bringing closer to God. Like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? But everything that I do creatively, artistically, there's always something that's deeper that's driving it. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's an obsession, but I say it's a definite purpose, and it's a mission. You know what I'm saying? Even with the education stuff, teaching African American history is what's going on with African American history now. it needs to be told. You know, there's so many different stories, like Wentworth Cheswell, who was like the first African American judge who was appointed in the 1700s. I mean, that's an important story for people who are on a path to judgeship, or people who are in law school who may not know these different things. You know what I'm saying? You know, I asked one of the people who ran the African American Museum who was the first black judge ever appointed, and she did not know. You know what I mean? So those are the things that I think that are important. Yeah, and it drives everything. Like even with The Last Jimmy, you know, the show, it was a hip hop musical, but it was about mass incarceration. You know, when me and Phil came up with that idea, it really wasn't even about a musical event. It was more like outraged about what's going on with mass incarceration, privatized prisons, you know, an unfair judicial system.
Let's talk about the Insanity Project. 9 solo albums in. What does the 9th album still give you in that conversation? Wait. What does the 9th album still give you that a conversation? Oh, what is the 9th album that... Man, I can't speak. What does the 9th album still give you that a conversation, a book, a play, none of those things can?
Well, you know, I guess we get something from all of those things, and I guess after you've kind of done all those different things, that is like a really good question. What does, you know, rapping 30 different songs 9 different times on your solo stuff, plus the stuff you did with the Roots, and you're coming back to rap again? You know, I guess that's like the issue of being so old and still making music. You know what I mean? I think that you know, the Insanity Project, I think the Kilgorithm, hip hop, everything, they give their own different thing, right? So with the Insanity Project, it's more like it's an album that's talking about society now, versus like something that was inspired by just me talking to girls, or just me wanting to talk about money in a rap song. The Insanity Project gives me a chance to talk about the world in this like post-COVID world where there's a lot of grief. You know, so many different people have lost their mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts. I mean, not all at once, but I mean, some people have had a tremendous amount of loss. Some people have had, you know, I can't say that they had a smaller loss or a bigger loss than someone's had versus someone else's loss, because it's loss, right? But I don't even know if that made sense. But what I can say, the Insanity Project is that it doesn't make sense. Like this whole entire world, the way that we're living day to day doesn't make sense. All these wars going on, people starving, inflation, you know, just the temperament of people, everybody on edge, you know, the political scope. It's all insane. And then you throw COVID-19 on top of that, and then you throw, you know, children's education on top of that, and how far behind kids are in cognitive thought, and the lawsuits that come out of, or that were going against Facebook and, you know, Meta platforms. I mean, all of those different things come together as a whole. And then at the same time, being African American and experiencing that, it comes to a different lens, and that is the Insanity Project. And of course, I've never delivered that on a record before, because me personally, this will be the first project that I release after I lost my mother and my father, right? So there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of that in the album, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration that some people may view as insane.
Insanity, that's a loaded word. When you say the Insanity Project, are we talking about the state of the world, your own inner life, the act of making music after 3 decades? What are you pointing at?
Yeah, I mean, when I say insane, I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm pointing at the state of the world. I'm pointing at the state of hip hop. I'm pointing at the state of self, you know, and I'm pointing at, you know, just society collapsing and unraveling, and a lot of it having to do really with just like, you know, social media. To a certain degree, it has really driven a lot of this stuff and a lot of these narratives to make people even more crazy. Like, you know, people online, everybody's an expert, and people are actually taking advice from these people who are not experts. You know, people who have 0 life experience, they just sound good when they say something, and then you taking their advice and they're running with it. I mean, just like in the African American community, social media is so big and it has such a giant footprint from just day-to-day life and how we interact with each other that I think that stuff definitely has to be addressed. And I think it is definitely a form of insanity.
You said before that your music has carried things you rarely say out loud. What did this album say or release that you've been holding on to?
Well, I think the Insanity Project, it says a lot of things that I don't say in conversation, and mainly those things are things in anger. Like when I make music, I express anger, I express love more so than I do talking, because I don't really talk that much, because I have a very small circle. And it was interesting talking the other day while I was up at NBC, talking to Rick. He was like, basically like, yo, you're one of the people I feel most comfortable talking to. And I was like, yo, that's exactly how I feel too, because we've known each other since we were kids. And a lot of times I think that even with knowing people for a long time, there's still things that you may feel that you may never verbalize, you know what I'm saying? Just because it just may be too heavy, or it just may be too complicated to kind of just have a conversation in passing about emotions that we may be feeling. And it's so interesting, like when you do finally say something out loud, it is a relief, or it could cause even more issues, you know what I'm saying? And life and death begins on the tongue, we know that. And so you got to be careful about what you say, but at the same time on the album, I feel like music expression is another one of God's languages, and when it comes out, and it's just going to be what it is. And for me, a lot of things come out of my music that I don't talk about conversation on a regular basis. Grief being mainly one of those things too.
You're dropping this on Juneteenth. That's not an accident. Walk us through that decision, because I think it means more than a release date.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even with the Insanity Project, with the way that African Americans experience America, to me, I feel like it's a form of insanity. And with Juneteenth is almost that freedom, that moment we get a chance to celebrate and have that moment of a realization that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's huge. You know what I'm saying? That's huge. And also June is Black Music Month too, just in general. So those things combined, and with the project, the Insanity Project, I feel like it's the perfect time to drop that joint, and I'm excited, man.
Let's talk about the new Freedom Theater, founded in 1966, nearly 60 years old. You came in as board chair and creative artistic director. What does it mean to you to lead something with that much history and that much weight?
Yeah, I mean, the Freedom Theater Project is a really important project for me for a lot of different reasons. I mean, one is I was a student at Freedom Theater when I was a kid, so I already have experienced the transformation that Freedom Theater can provide for any student that walks in those doors. And it's not even a theater. It's really, that's exactly what I can call it. It's a transformation mechanism. It's where people walk in one way and then they come out transformed another way. And everybody that walked through Freedom Theater's doors, I mean, they didn't become a thespian. They didn't become an actor, a singer, or a dancer. A lot of them did. But a lot of them went into politics. A lot of them went into medicine. A lot of them went on to become, Oscar, Tony-winning actors and actresses. Like, a lot of them, like Phil Brown, for instance. Who's a Freedom Theater student who went on to do Disney. He went on to run the Shipley School. I mean, one of his students is Dave Cornswell, the new Superman. So, I mean, all of that comes from the Freedom Theater teaching, you know what I'm saying? So, it's just, it's a great opportunity, and I'm definitely excited to just be a part of it and a part of the leadership, and to help people see that, theater is actually one of those things is going to be one of the few things that last in the future. With artificial intelligence, there's nothing like human interaction and being able to engage with the stage performance and lights and the actors and the dancers and the sets and the prompts. I mean, all that stuff is human interaction, and it's valuable, especially in this AI world.
You're anchoring NFT at 1346 North Broad Street in Philadelphia. That address carries real meaning for people watching who don't know the full story. What is the vision for that space, and why does it matter beyond just a building?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, the address is really important. because it's definitely in one of those areas that we consider North Broad in Philadelphia, and there's the North Broad Alliance that is doing amazing things to revitalize the whole area. And when you revitalize, you know, the main hub, the whole area hits like a ripple effect, and it's like a wave of just positive things that, and the opportunity that can come into that community. So we're very excited about that. And we're on Temple's campus. So what we're doing at Freedom Theater is developing the whole entire Freedom Theater campus, which is a 65,000 square foot project. It takes up literally an entire city block, you know what I'm saying? And it's been African American owned and operated since 1966.
Kilgorithm, how YouTube built a machine that profits from Black Death. That title alone is an indictment. Make the case. What did you see happening that made you feel like this needed to be a book?
Well, you know, this is not my first book. This is my second book. The first book was the narrative, and the things that I started seeing that even with the narrative was just how the gangster narrative was starting to drown out every form of African American expression in America. Like, no matter if it's a song, if it's a movie, it's always something in it that's gangster, something in it that's mirror imaging of the face of criminality in America. And it's not just only black people. I mean, it happens to Italian Americans too, Latinos, poor white people. It's almost like the poor person or the impoverished person is the more believable person for these acts of criminality, right? And or whatever is the theme of whatever it is being gangster. But still, there's other forms of expression in movies or narratives, the things that don't support that, except in what I'm associated with. And that's the thing that I have to kind of look up at. Fast forward, you know, YouTube. There are young kids who are having neighborhood rivals and neighborhood beefs with each other, who make a song, they upload the song on YouTube, and then the other kids from across the street or around the corner or up the block or other side of the city see that video on YouTube and use that as a signal to then go back and make some form of retaliation, and that retaliation being violence. And it's this self-perpetuating thing that YouTube is making millions and millions of dollars on, and children in the inner city are being slaughtered by the thousands because of this. Multiple gangs, multiple indictments, multiple weapons, multiple drugs, and YouTube is the main stage that it has set the stage for this thing, and it goes into an algorithm, you know, which is why we call the book Kilgorithm, because it goes into this algorithm of people who want to see the next beef, they want to see the next problem. Especially in local areas, because the local rappers get to beefing and it creates some kind of local mystique, and it's a war and people know about it. And it's like the YouTube fights and the phone and the Instagram and the social media again has figured out a way to unravel the fabric of society, where people have accepted the fact that they could upload a video to a public access channel and then be murdered. What if PBS was like that? It would be insane. It would be insane, because that's basically what YouTube is. YouTube is public access network, you know what I'm saying? But instead of it's the public, it's the whole entire world. And if someone is putting up a video that attaches itself to an algorithm that pumps out the super narrative that is negative against somebody else, and then both of these people end up murdered, I think that that's an issue. And I do have to say, I think that if it was not just black kids that was getting killed, there would be a bigger issue. But since it is just black kids, it's like, fuck it, you know, business as usual. So the Kilgorithm, that's what this book is about.
Most people who write about algorithms write from the outside, as journalists, academics, critics. You wrote this in the first person. Why was that the right voice for this particular argument?
Well, because, you know, I'm a hip hop, you know, genius, you know, world-renowned writer, producer. I mean, you know, maybe one of the best that ever did it, you know. But at the same time, I'm almost like a rapper that's against rap now, because of how negative, because of all the things that are associated with it, because all the ideas, the violence, and it feels like I'm the perfect person to talk about it, because I lived in hip hop most of my life. But what I'm witnessing right now with the Kilgorithm, with the YouTube murders, this is nothing that resembles hip hop. This is something else that is, it's almost like the hip hop genre has now almost been weaponized against itself. And that makes me want to ring the alarm as just a hip hop enthusiast.
Tonal shift. The psychological study of hip hop has been studied culturally, politically, sociologically, historically. You're saying we've missed the body entirely. What does it mean to study hip hop psychologically?
I think, well, my book is called Hip Hop Everything, the physiological study of hip hop. And I think that there's a lot of things that people miss with hip hop that is physical. I mean, one is dance, which is why with the Insanity Project, we have a full dance movie, you know what I'm saying? It's a full hour-long video of just this expression dance that I worked on with choreographer and videographers that I work with all the time at the Freedom Theater crew, and it's just so exciting to be able to express myself in that way. But the physiological study of hip hop, or Hip Hop Everything, which is what the book is called, Hip Hop Everything. The physiological study of hip hop. How do beats make people feel, right? I think that's something that really has been kind of like underutilized and understated in hip hop. It's like, okay, we all know that people like beats, or when they say a beat, some people might not even know what you mean. They might think you're talking about, a vegetable that you're gonna mix with carrots and apples or something like that, you know what I'm saying? But a real beat is like, you're like, yo, man, that beat is crazy. Or I'll just say, I don't really like the song, or I don't know what the lyrics are about, but I love the beat. So I think that when people talk about that, that's something that really needs to be unpacked, because the beat of hip hop is almost like the beat of the heart, you know what I'm saying? The heartbeat, the beat of the street, the beat of the people. I mean, this is the beat. What does that do to people's brains? And it does something. It does something. When people like a beat, it reacts something in their brains. There's like a pleasure sensor, when people like a beat, they start to dance to it. They react to it physically. When people don't like a beat, they turn off, they get disconnected, they get disinterested in what's going on. And that right there kind of gives us a little bit of insight to why hip hop deserves a physiological study. And not only physiological study, but philosophical too,
What do you want someone to do differently after they read Kilgorithm? Is there a version of the problem, or is there a version of the platform that becomes redeemable, or is the architecture itself the problem?
I think that the architecture itself is a problem. I think the fact that we, the people, can watch children be murdered based off of YouTube posts and accept that as a normal behavior in society tells me that something is broken inside us. It tells me something's broken inside the viewer. It tells me that the whole system needs to be uprooted, rewired, and maybe even shut down to a certain degree. I know YouTube there's positive things on YouTube, you know what I mean? Trust me. I watch YouTube every day. But the fact that children in the inner city are being murdered because of these algorithmic posts that they make that are attached to what people actually want to see, is this beef that continues, is the biggest problem. And I think that what I want people to do is stop accepting these insane ideas that we have rationalized as normalcy in the world today. And I think that YouTube's Kilgorithm is one of those things that we have rationalized insanity. And I want people to wake up.
Philadelphia made you, and now in a lot of ways you're helping make Philadelphia, or at least fight for what it should be. What does the city still need from its artists, and what do artists still need from the city?
That's a great question. I think that Philadelphia needs from its artists to stand up and take accountability for their narrative. What are we saying to society as artists? How are we contributing to society as artists? Is the art that we're making, is it benefiting society as a whole? Are we contributing positivity? Are we contributing negative? Are we contributing devilish thoughts? Are we contributing something that's a message of God? I think artists need to think about that and think about where these gifts come from. And I think that's how artists could not just benefit, not Philadelphia artists, just benefit the city of Philadelphia, but just artists in general, singers in general. You know what I'm saying? We're supposed to see ourselves creating like the creator. You know, that's why these things are gifts. That's why they're given to us. And we got to be good stewards with those gifts. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just can't squander that shit and just throw it around like it's nothing, because it's a very big gift that we've all been given and we're all blessed. Now, on top of that, what can the city of Philadelphia do for its artists? Of course, support it. But Philadelphia, with the new mayor, she's been putting out a lot of new initiatives that really transformed some of the Philadelphia local art scenes, especially as the music, you know. And I feel like Philadelphia is ushering in something new that I've almost never seen before on the East Coast city or up North city, because I think, you know, Miami, Atlanta, a lot of those places in California, they've adopted these, you know, lead with the arts, and I salute, you know, Mayor Parker for that, you know, leading with the arts, and I salute, you know, Senator Sharif Street, and, you know, I salute Jordan Harris, and, you know, Malcolm Kenyatta, and Chris Rabb, you know, I support all these guys, Senator Hughes, and I salute them, you know. They don't need my support, but they got it, but I salute them, you know. And for what the efforts they do to try to help the artists and to help the city of Philadelphia and arts community kind of come together as one thing. I think that's positive.
I know philosophy, cosmology, spiritual inquiry, these aren't just hobbies for you. They inform the work. How does the way you think about the universe show up in the music, in theater, and in writing?
Well, you know, to me, you know, that's a real funny question, right? Because to me, you know, the universe, you know, everything that's spiritual or esoteric or whatever the case may be, whatever people believe, all of that stuff is God. You know, it's just a person, our way of going around the house just to get into the front door. And the front door is salvation, you know, with God. And listen, you know, whatever I believe is what I believe. I'm not trying to push it on anybody. But, you know, I think that, you know, to look in this world and to look at the universe and come up with nothing but questions and to try to find all these different answers when there's really one explanation for it all. You know, I watched something on black holes last night, and they're like, black holes, what do we do? Because, you know, in 500 billion years, Earth may not be here because of the black. It's like, yo, Earth could be going like that. You worried about 500 billion years from now or black holes? It's like, or they say, oh, the way that the atoms move, it's almost like it's moving in the rhythmic pattern. It's like it's like, and you need to ask a question about that? It almost makes me think some of the smartest people in the world are some of the dumbest people in the world. And I think, like, the more that, you know, we go into coming up with these explanations, and it's fun to watch, you know, it's fun to watch some of the smartest people in the world, you know, discuss theories on relativity and theories on string theory or, quantum physics and all these different things, when it's so obvious. Every time we think we got it figured out, we learn that we absolutely know absolutely nothing, and that's humbling to me, and it comes through in my music because, you know, we're all on a journey, and I feel like I'm on a spiritual journey. I've been working on my faith, you know, and that's it, you know. But yeah, it shows up in my music and everything I do.
30 years, all of this, the albums, the theater, the books, the institution, the ideas. What do you want people to walk away understanding about who Dice Raw is? Not what he's done, but who he is.
You know, hopefully I get another 30 and then people can make up their minds about that, you know. But I think that what I want people to know about me is I'm an artist that puts art first. You know, I put, you know, style first. I put taste first, because there is no good or bad art. I don't believe in good or bad. I never have. You know what I'm saying? I believe that there's good deeds and bad deeds, but when it comes down to good art or bad art, I don't believe in that. I only believe in what exists. You know what I'm saying? And I want people to take the bodies of work that I did and just try to understand me or try to get into my headspace. And even if you don't do that, maybe my book will get into your headspace. maybe my book will get into their minds, their hearts, instead of it being the reverse of people trying to take away of whatever it is that I'm doing. Because I don't want to say legacy, because I saw that Mike Tyson video where that little girl asked him about his legacy. Mike didn't like that shit, you know what I'm saying? But it also he made a good point. You know, it's like at the end of the day, what are people going to really care about my fucking legacy? You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm a rapper. I grew up in North Philly. You know, I've always led with my heart, and I've always had a conscious mind, and I've always done conscious lyrics, and hopefully that's had an effect on the people that heard it. But the legacy part is kind of like a little bit bullshit. Or what do I want people to think of me 30 years from now or 40 years from now? You know, if people are thinking about me 30 years from now, I hope it's positive, and I hope they aren't like, kill King Dice, you know what I'm saying? We have to get rid of King Dice. How did this motherfucker become king of earth, you know what I'm saying? You know, if it's anything negative, hopefully it's something like that. But for the most part, I hope it's positive. I hope that I had an effect on people's lives. I hope when people go back and listen to the lyrics of the things that I wrote about, you know, spiritualism, or the things I wrote about depression, or the things I wrote about grief, I hope those things have an effect on people, and it can be a positive effect. I hope that they can take something away. And if not, nobody cares. I'll be dead. You know what I'm saying? Like Mike Tyson said, I'll be dead. I'm not going to care. I'll be in heaven. You think I'm going to be worried about you while I'm in heaven? No. That's why it's called heaven. Hello? Anyway.
All right, you've got 70 plus songs with the Roots spanning nearly 30 years.
Ooh.
How does that relationship, that creative brotherhood, show up in who you are as a solo artist?
You know, working with the Roots and having so many collaborative projects together, you know, that span from TV to film to music to that really expand to growing up. Because to a certain degree, like, you know, I said in another interview, like, you know, the Roots basically kind of raised me, you know what I mean? They took me in as a 13-year-old kid from off the streets of North Philadelphia. And, you know, the first time I went to the studio, I had a gun on me. And they were like, yo, that's whack. They were like, yo, what's the matter with you? Somebody's gonna kill you. And they was like, first of all, you're not even tough. It was like, why you got a gun? I said, well, that's why I got it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna be somebody's example out here. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, the Roots really took me in a whole different direction. And it's not just a collaboration on songs or TV or films or commercials or all the amazing things that we were able to work together, or I was blessed to be a part of with that organization. But you know, it's a life. It's not a creative project. It's a life project. And you know, and in being in a room with the Roots and Richard Nichols, the former Roots manager, the great genius Richard Nichols, and the genius Questlove, and the genius Black Thought, and the genius Sean G. I mean, what these people have really taught me throughout my whole entire life is that to do the right thing. You know, let's do the right thing. Let's try to be positive. And nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. But that being in that room with those people really grew me to be in the rooms that I go in today, right? And I'm still going in the rooms with them. The other day I'm in a room and Jimmy comes in there, and Jimmy Fallon's a funny guy, like I love him to death. But every time Jimmy sees me, I feel like he's trying to figure out what my job is. Like he's like, hey you. He's like, how are you? And he's like, man, you always look nice. I said, well, thanks, Jimmy. You know, he's like, you got a tie on? I said, well, you know, Jimmy, I'm not gonna come up here and embarrass you. He's like, oh, what are you talking about? You know, so I say, hey, listen, you know, it's just a blessing to be with those guys and work with those guys for this long time. And everything that I learned from being in the room, in the back room of those old days at Larry Gold's studio. Shout out Larry and Vicky. Love you. Larry, Vicky Gold, love you, okay? You know that. And but being in the back room of that studio, it really, you know, it got me ready for something that I had no idea I needed to get ready for.
What's the biggest misconception that funders, presenters, and the industry at large still have about Black theater institutions, and what does it cost? And what does it cost when those misconceptions go unchallenged?
Oh, I think that's a good question. I see why you cut that, Jacob. See, right now we're doing questions that Jacob was like, look, man, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. But you know what? I know why you cut that, and I like the fact that you wanted to cut that because it's very ambiguous and it kind of like, it just leaves it open. But the one thing I'll try to say it, reshape it, and make a little bit more sense out of it. I think that a lot of times it's not just presenters and performing arts center producers who have a misconception about African American art. I think that a lot of times the African American artists have a difficult way of explaining exactly what this art represents, right? And I think that if you're not in tune to the African American experience, which is something that's cultural, right? It's everything that we do artistically, no matter what race we are. All these different things are culturally, right? And I think Denzel explained this when talking about, Schindler's List. Could a non-Jewish director direct Schindler's List? Probably. Could he kill it? Probably. But is he going to miss certain things that are tied into Jewish culture? Yes. Could somebody besides Ben Affleck or Matt Damon, could they have done what's the Apples movie, the thing in Boston that they did? Yeah, they're classic. They have a classic about Boston. It's like Matt Damon's super smart in the movie, and it's on the tip of my tongue. But in any case, could anybody besides Ben Affleck or Matt Damon done that movie? I would argue no. Because there's certain things that are tied into the nuances of being in Boston culture, of being in the city of Massachusetts, to understanding the landscape of how one side has always looked down on the other side. It's impossible. I feel like I want to call the movie Lakewood Ranch, but that's not the movie, you know what I'm saying? But it's something like that, you know what I'm saying? It's like, the movie with the apples, where he's like, do you like apples? And he's like, yeah, I like apples. Like, well, how do you like them apples? You know what I'm saying? It's like, what is something about mind or something? Anyway, it doesn't matter, you know what I'm saying? But I think that a lot of times with artistic presenters and producers, I think the problem of not being able to put on a lot of African American art on a high level is really is a cultural thing, and we have to be able to understand each other's culture a lot more in order for us to have these great conversations and put on bigger productions and better productions that serve the community and serve the majority of the community. Because when we do something that's artistically creative, when we say the community, we're not just talking about the African American community. We're not just talking about the white community. We're talking about everybody in the community because we're trying to serve the community. And music and art and dance, these are universal languages that should be expressed. You know what I'm saying? In His name. And that's all I got to say. I'm Carl Dice Raw Jenkins. I want to say thank you to Lunch Hour for having me.